guys, welcome to the Sailor Moon Fan Club podcast. I'm your host, Victoria L. Johnson, and I'm here with music and culture journalist and podcaster Christina Lee. She's the co-host of the Something to Say podcast with DJ Booth senior writer Yo and Boss Up associate editor Jason Ja Lee, aka Hip Hop Obama, and she co-hosts the Bottom of the Map podcast with Dr. Regina and Bradley, where they discuss and explore Southern hip hop. And of course, she's a Sailor Moon fan. So without further ado, thank you for coming on the show, Christina. Hey, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, Victoria. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy you're here.
Oh my god. When I showed your outreach tweet to Yo and Ja, I was like, this might be the most random shout out that we've gotten so far. Because Something to Say listeners, as far as I can tell, are overwhelmingly majority male. So to have like a Sailor Moon fan reach out was like, yes, finally my people.
Yeah, it's so funny. I never thought of that. I actually have like a mutual acquaintance with Yo. So I had another podcast called Nerds on Hip Hop. So like we sent him one of our panels because we did it on hip hop and anime. And yeah, so it was just like I always knew he was like an anime fan. So but I never thought of like the Something to Say podcast having like majority male fans, and definitely not like nerd fans, because I'm just like, oh, like Christina's nerd and like Yo's a nerd, so why not?
Well, now I guess like we can say that we're majority nerd now. Ja's definitely more of like the Marvel comic book type guy, so like anything in regards to DC, Marvel, and like the Hollywood treatment, like that's completely his bag. Yo and my husband Mike, they can talk like Dragon Ball Z all day, and they've already outlined their college curriculum. I'm just lost. And I'm sitting over here in my corner being like, yeah, like Sailor Moon. I mean, I'm not even the biggest like anime fan necessarily. And like, I feel like I'm still relatively new to the genre, at least compared to my husband, who was in anime club in middle school and high school. I just like really like Sailor Moon and everything that it's inspired.
I think that's fine, because I feel like there are a lot of people who've watched so much anime, but they never seen Sailor Moon. And I'm like, well, like it's one of the like best, like the top most popular animes. So I'm like, I feel like you have enough.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what was your first memory of watching Sailor Moon?
I think unlike a lot of people, or especially like the friends who I've talked to about Sailor Moon, like I was already in my 30s. So I'm 33 right now, and I was 31 when I started watching the show. All of the seasons were basically on Hulu. And yeah, so my husband and I were scrolling through Hulu looking for something new to watch, and he had really fond memories of not only Sailor Moon but Revolutionary Girl Lieutenant. He was like, you know, I'd be down to, you know, just revisit this series. And I was like, okay, cool, because when it comes to TV, my tastes in general tend to be a little bit more lighthearted anyway, so I was like, okay, perfect, just like a fluffy sitcom to get into. I had no idea what was in store, but of course I came out into the other side a much better person.
Yes, as we all do. How did you feel? Like, what were you thinking when you were watching it?
My expectations were, I mean, there weren't really any expectations really. I mean, I obviously knew of Sailor Moon and I had seen like the imagery before, like of course. But I guess number one, I had no idea that I would relate so much to Usagi, and I had no idea going into this that I would even think of Sailor Moon as watching Sailor Moon anyway as like a form of self-care, because that's really how I took to the show. Like really, Sailor Moon was sort of like, obviously it was like escapism for me, but I really appreciated, I guess, like the balance between, I guess, their normal like schoolgirl everyday life, and then obviously like the superhero narrative. And then like, I guess what's interesting about the show is that at least for a good period of time, Usagi in particular is like reckoning with the balance of all that. I just had no idea. So my first impressions was just like, oh my god, here's this world that I can like totally get into. And even though I'm much older than Usagi, I felt like I can relate to these inherent struggles, you know?
Yeah, that's so cool. I think well, I know one other person who watched it later, but it's cool that like people can still become fans of it even though they're like getting into it now, because I feel like sometimes I get scared that like I love it through nostalgia,
Sure.
but I rewatch it and I'm like I still love it. So I'm like obviously I still love it, but you never know.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And I think when I talk to a lot of my peers, that's the initial impression that they get. And I think a lot of that has to do with how it was marketed once it crossed over to the US, right? Like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, when they hear Sailor Moon, at least here, they think of it as inherently like a kid's show. And of course, like that monster of the week type format lends itself well to like a kid's show, but like
Mm-hmm.
I found that a lot of the themes and a lot of the struggles in particular that Usagi dealt with was stuff that I could, relate to as an adult.
Right. So would you say Usagi was the like Senshi you wanted to be, or the one that like kind of stuck out to you?
So, like, okay, so here's the thing. As far as, like, aspirationally speaking, like, I really wish I could be a Mars. I really wish I could be a Jupiter. And then once we got to, like, Neptune, and I was just like, oh my god, these girls are so cool. They're so much cooler than I will ever be. But I have to acknowledge the fact that, like Usagi's a stress eater, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm a stress eater at heart, and she's clumsy, and she doesn't get good grades in school, so it's like by watching her I had to acknowledge like my own realities as a person. I was like, yes, this is the imperfect hero I could really fuck with.
Yeah, definitely. That's all me too. I'm just like I am definitely Usagi and I'm happy with that, but I also really want to be Neptune or Pluto.
Yes,
That's like
exactly.
who do you want to be when you're an adult? That's who it is.
Exactly. This
Yeah.
is who I wanted to be when I grow up. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I totally get that. So I want to switch gears a little bit. Well, actually, since you have a podcast about Southern hip hop, I wanted to. I was curious what you think. If each Sailor Moon fan had a favorite rapper or a hip hop subgenre, what do you think it would be?
Oh my god. Oh my god. That is so crazy. Oh, let me think here.
Yeah.
Who's the trap fan of the group? I guess that
Right.
we'll start there. I feel like the older Senshis, like, I mean,
Hmm.
I could see them being like West Side Gunna fans or like Griselda, like they listen to that gritty shit because they've seen
Right.
some things and they appreciate the throwback because they remember those years. I don't know.
Yeah, I could
Uh,
see that. I could totally see that. Like they
let's
probably really
see.
love Liquid Swords.
Yeah, I'm saying, oh my freaking god.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like Jupiter and Megan Thee Stallion get along really well. Like I see that
Hmm.
connection, even though I feel like Megan doesn't really fuck with Sailor Moon like that.
She
It's okay.
doesn't.
She
Yeah.
doesn't. Oh no.
No, she actually said it on a she went live on Crunchyroll, and one of the questions they asked was whether or not she likes Sailor Moon, and she was like she doesn't. But she said it's because she thinks Tuxedo Mask interferes too much in the fights. And I feel like she just watched like some of the first season and didn't finish it.
Mhm.
So I think if she like read the manga or like finished the series, she would have a different idea. So that's like my campaign if I ever see her or
Oh
meet her
yeah,
and
for
talk to
sure,
her.
for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there were definitely times when Sailor Moon made itself apparent that it was airing weekly. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
these seasons were like hella long. And Tuxedo Mask was like Steve Urkel, entering the house in like Family Matters or something like that. It's like, oh, here we go again.
Right.
It definitely fell into that format a little bit. So I see where she's coming from, but then of course, like, I mean, some shit happens. I mean, you know that, I know that,
Yeah.
we know better.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah. But yeah, but I could totally see Meg and Jupiter just cuz like they have like the tall, like stallion thing going on. They're fighters a little bit, like that
And
fighting
Jupiter's
spirit.
like kind of insecure about her height initially, right? So I could see her
Mhm.
turning to Megan as like a source of inspiration. It's like, oh, I don't have to be ashamed of my height or whatever, even though she's like what 5'8". Like, even
Mhm.
still, I wish, even though that's not that tall.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. Taller than me.
Yeah, same,
Yeah.
same.
Um I'll throw in one. I always feel like Sailor Mercury would be really into like lo-fi hip hop just because like she studies.
She's
I think that's
yeah,
like
yeah, she's always studying. I mean, I could totally see that too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't want, and I mean, I'm like kind of the same way, at least like when I'm working, like during the day. Like during the day, I like really can't do lyricism because it just takes me out of my work entirely.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for most of my waking hours, I am listening to like the Lo-Fi Beats channel or trying to find like some interesting jazz or like a Kamasi Washington or something. That's, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that's like hip hop adjacent. She could, I mean, I could see her even messing with um like a Raz G or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
I see all that.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Um, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to like at least finish the inner Senshi.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think
Um
Sailor Moon.
I mean, yeah, with
Mm.
Usagi, that's pretty interesting because like my initial impression would be something like I could almost see her messing around with like a Uzi Vert. That was my first
Hmm.
impression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so too. I think too like that. No, I won't say bubbly, but like a
Mhm.
no name.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I see that too. I see
Yeah.
that too.
I think all we have left is Venus.
Okay. Um. Oh, that's a tricky one.
Yeah. That
That is
is.
a tricky one. This is a good exercise, though.
Thank you. I was like, this. It's something I've always thought about for some reason. I don't know. Maybe because, like, hip hop fan, Sailor Moon fan. I'm just like, what would they listen to?
I mean, it's kind of like that fandom exercise where you try to dress the Sailor Moon cast as like hypebeasts or whatever, try to reimagine what their fashion would be like today because the
Right.
fashion as it was, you know, at that particular time was, I mean, that was like not half the fun with watching Sailor Moon, but a good portion of the fun was just seeing what fit they had. And I was like, oh my god, the attention to detail is like you could tell that a woman wasn't responsible for making these characters happen because even just down to like the shape of their nails, that attention to detail was just like chef's kiss, you know.
So true. Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that, like, all of them have, like, different shoes, too, when they transform. And I always thought,
Listen,
like, that was really cool.
yeah,
They
yeah.
could have made it more uniform, but yeah.
But at the same time, it's like no,
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate them honoring like you their whole unique personalities and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true, too. Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
Um, hmm. I'm still trying to think of Sailor Venus. I don't know.
Let's see. I don't. Yeah, we might have to come back to that one,
Yeah.
but that's a fun exercise. That's
Yeah.
definitely a fun exercise.
Um. So you said you're not. You have you read any other anime, or have you watched any other anime or read any other manga since Sailor Moon?
So if I'm not mistaken, in 2018 there was like a manga reissue, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so once we caught wind of that, we just started ordering all of the manga issues as they've been coming out. And it's actually pretty perfect timing because we just got the most recent one, and of course we've been like quarantined,
Right.
so we've been able to check those out. Um, like as far as anime goes, like I'm very touch and go. But one show that we're watching right now, my husband and I as a couple, is His or Her Circumstances,
Oh.
which I had never heard of before. Had you?
No, I've never heard of it before.
Okay,
Huh.
so it's really cute actually. It is about like a high school couple. Like most of the first, I would say third is about them getting together and like this blossoming relationship and sort of like the questions that you ask of yourself like once you start to become vulnerable in like your first relationship like that, there's like a lot of uncertainty, like this weird sort of song and dance was like how vulnerable do you actually get, does this person still like me, blah blah blah. So I think I would say that it's like mostly about relationships,
Mm.
but what makes it interesting for the both of us is that it's and I'm gonna forget the name of the guy, but the person who directed it also did the Shin Godzilla remake.
Mm.
Not the one with Bryan Cranston, but like the Japanese one.
Okay.
And you can see how like this all kind of falls within his distinct style. Like I don't know if you saw that Shin Godzilla movie, but when you watch it, there's a lot of like dialogue on the screen and introductions, and it's actually very um, manga inspired as terms in terms of it how it's like stylized and stuff like that.
Mm.
So to see that style being translated from something that's like, you know, basically like a high school drama into something as serious as like Shin Godzilla, like is really fascinating to both of us.
Yeah, I can imagine. I just looked it up, and the cover actually looks really familiar. Is it on Netflix? I mean, his
I
and
don't.
her circumstances.
Oh, his or her circumstances.
Mm.
I mean, we used a torrent, so I,
Oh,
I
okay.
can't
Got it.
I can't say for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's on there, like I would
Yeah.
recommend watching it because I feel like
Mm.
so far the characters are like really fleshed out, and it kind of takes you back to
Mm.
you know, just sort of navigating interpersonal relationships in high
Mm.
school, like a less dramatized Degrassi for sure. In fact, Degrassi was just I don't know, like Degrassi is way too much drama,
Oh yeah.
but
Were you into Degrassi too?
I mean, I felt like it was kind of mandatory. Like if you
Mm.
had Noggin, if you had the end, you know, I mean, I was totally self-absorbed. I was totally absorbed in that. My brother was totally absorbed in that. So yes, we grew up watching, you know, Drake.
Yeah.
And we were definitely among those people that was like, wait a minute, he's rapping now. Like,
Like what?
I don't understand. Yeah,
Jimmy? Yeah.
the total disconnect.
Yeah, I was also we had the end. I think one of my friends like mentioned Degrassi and she kept talking about it. So I was like, let me check out this show and just
Uh,
got completely hooked. And then fell off, I think. After a character died and I was too sad to continue.
so
Mm.
much, yeah, right. It
Mhm.
was too much. I mean, there was
Mhm.
always something. I feel like in the beginning, there was. I'm strictly talking about the next generation, of course.
Same. Yeah.
There was some level of innocence. Like I distinctly remember that scene where it's like Drake and I think the girl's name was Ashley. Like they were sort of
Mhm.
seeing each other, but they were debating whether or not to have sex for the first time. So that in the end, the episode ends with them like blowing balloons out of the condoms they were supposed to use. Like
Mhm.
that's relatively like lighthearted compared to like where shit would go from there. Like after a while, shit just got too real, and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm good.
It's like shootings and yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
right.
lot.
And drugs, so much drugs.
Yeah. Oh, and scandals. Yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
but it was fun. But yeah. So what else do you stand? So you've mentioned being a fan of a few things.
Yeah.
What would you say you're a stan of?
I would say like my all-time favorite show is Daria. It's one that
Mm.
I always sort of return back to, and I would say that that's probably why I didn't catch Sailor Moon as it was originally airing on TV over here in the States. Is because I was going over to my aunt's house trying to watch Daria, and in general, like I really like animated series because I'm not the sort of person that looks at that and associates that with necessarily being a kid series. Like I
Right.
look at animation just like as a medium, and so I really love Daria, and I would say the show that the last show that I watched that I really, really, really loved was Steven Universe, and of
Mm.
course, like that just wrapped. Um, but I feel like that show gave me some of the same feelings that Sailor Moon did, in the sense that like here's this like beautifully laid out universe, fully matriarchal, right? And at first starts off as like pretty much what you'd expect from this type of genre. It's like they're fighting monsters like every single week, and we're watching like this young hero, you know, come of age and everything like that. But I really appreciated how Rebecca Sugar in particular kind of toyed around with the conventions of those genres and
Mm.
made some like pretty serious anime references along the way and anime callbacks. But then also by the end of it, I don't know if you watched Steven Universe Future,
I
the
haven't yet.
culmination. Okay,
But
but I would say
mhm.
like if you've ever wondered how the heroes of these series like come out like after having fought and fought and fought and fought, like I
Mhm.
feel like Steven Universe Future is like a really interesting exercise and all that. It is a tough watch, I would say, but as somebody who's particularly interested in how issues of like mental health are explored through quote unquote innocuous genres like this, I thought it was
Mhm.
like really interesting, and I thought it was really well done.
Right.
So yeah, I would say Steven Universe for sure. In fact, all of my desktops right now are like Steven Universe backgrounds, just because the show was also so beautifully done, and I just want to
Mm-hmm.
like be in that world. I wanted to stay in that world for a lot longer than the show actually lasted, but I also appreciate the fact that like a show knows when to end. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really important because some shows drag on, and that's not great.
I mean, I feel like American TV in general just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't know when to end, and that's how you get like a show like Friends that lasts for 10 plus seasons. Like, I don't think
Right.
of 10 plus seasons as aspirational, like at all. I just feel like at that point it's like a cash grab.
Yeah, I
Um,
think a good solid 5 seasons is usually
right.
a
Because most
good.
people don't really think through like a series arc in a meaning or a show arc in a meaningful way up to 10 seasons. Like usually they've got ahead to like the first 3, and then 4 season 4 is usually where you start to see them kind of rack their brains a little bit, being like, oh god, okay, we got the money to do this, but we hadn't thought this far ahead. So you kind of see the show jump the shark a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I really one of my friends with Steven Universe, they were really like, you need to watch this. This was a few years ago because
Mm.
Rebecca Sugar is a Sailor Moon fan, and like you said, like a lot of the show is based on not based on, but inspired by Sailor Moon. So they were like, if you love Sailor Moon, you need to go watch the show.
Oh,
Yeah,
for
so
sure.
it's
And there's even a couple scenes that are directly inspired by Revolutionary Girl Lieutenant, which was
oh
another
wow.
show that I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little tougher for me to get into, but I still really liked it. But so even seeing those callbacks, I was like, oh shit, like she's serious about her references.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I also love Daria. I did a rewatch of that in college, or not really a rewatch, because like it was one of those shows I kind of caught here and there, and I was like, oh,
Uh-huh.
let me watch this through. I kind of had like a phase, like I went through all of Gargoyles, all of Batman the animated series, and then all of Daria.
Oh
And I was just
wow.
like going through like all these cartoons that like I never really watched from beginning to end, and yeah, Daria is amazing.
Oh my god.
Mm,
It's held up. It
so
continues to
well.
hold up so well. Like, I mean, I aspire to be as fashionable as like the Sailor Moon Senshi, but at the end of the day, like my fashion sense is completely like a mix of like Daria and Jane, and then like the protagonists and like freaks and geeks. So there's that
Mm,
aspect of it all. And I mean, the show, like the critiques are still searing as ever. Like, I mean, Jodie is an icon,
mm-hmm.
obviously. Jane's an icon, and the older that we get, the more that my husband and I debate is like, are we more of a Jake or are we more of a Helen? You know what I mean? Like, we recognize that, like, as we continue to face our mortality, that it's inevitable that we turn into either one or the other.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I've found that I'm identifying more with like the older characters too
Oh
of
my
things.
god.
It's like, oh, I
Yes,
get it.
yes. Yeah, I mean, Mr. DiMartino is me at Costco, like, all the time.
I could see that. And now they're doing a Jodie spinoff too, so that should be pretty great.
Yeah, Tracy Ellis Ross is linked to that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm
Um,
curious how that will turn out.
yes, I think curious is the right word. I think in
Mm-hmm.
general, reboots are a cash grab. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
generally don't mess with them, but I do think that this particular reboot is a testament to the timelessness of the show.
Right.
So I'd be curious to see how this is an extension of that and how that would resonate in the year 2020.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. I think I'm just like, oh, more black people, but yeah.
But I mean, absolutely, and see, Jodie was tired. She was so tired. Jodie
Mm-hmm.
does need more of Jodies on the wherever she may go, because you can tell throughout the series she was just so tired of being like this one exceptional minority, this one exceptional black girl. She's like, can't
Right.
y'all just like I don't know, be adequate for once? I don't know. Like, she was tired of like having to
Being the
be this overly exceptional person.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I want to talk about your podcast a little bit. How
Okay.
did Something to Say come about, and how did Bottom of the Map come about?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So with something to say, it was very much Ja's idea. So, oh my god, I don't know how long it's been I'm sorry, Ja, but like, yeah. Um, See, the thing is with Atlanta music journalists in particular is like we're always bound to run into each other like at events. So we've known each other for years, even if it's only in passing or whatever. So like I feel like I have been running into Ja at events for a couple years prior. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he approached me wanting to do like a hip hop podcast, and I would say around this time also, Isaac Hayes the third, who I believe is the grandson of the very singer Isaac Hayes, tweeted something about how a lot of black cultural events and a lot of hip hop cultural events take place in Atlanta because they recognize Atlanta to be this cultural mecca, but like there is a lack of media representation here. So that was very much like a call to action that was at the forefront of our minds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Ja had approached me, and then he was like, "Okay, to balance out this cast, we need somebody young because Ja and I are both in our 30s. So I thought of a couple young people, and Yo's pretty interesting because in that Yo is not somebody who I would have recognized off the get go because, as you know, he doesn't like to show his face like on social
Right.
media and things like that. But we had known each other because he has sold me Jeezy tickets when Jeezy did the anniversary show for Let's Get It TM 101.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how we actually came to meet for the first time because I made some call out to Twitter being like, "Hey, I need like an extra ticket or something," and for whatever reason that Yo probably regrets, like he sold his ticket. Yeah, Yo was like the first young person that I thought of, and we did a couple tester episodes to see like how this cast would get along, and it's been that way ever since. And then as far as bottom of the map, it's actually kind of the opposite story in that Regina and I were actually kind of scouted in a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
We appeared on Atlanta's NPR affiliate, which is WABE. We were both called in to the show City Lights to talk about Childish Gambino's This Is America. And the VP of radio at the time, Christine Dempsey, heard our interview. If you go into the building, you'll see that like every office suite or whatever has their radio dialed into the station so they can kind of monitor what's going on. So Christine is like overhearing us, and behind the scenes, WABE was already digging into podcasts. They had another like more investigative series called Buried Truths, but they wanted to experiment with the chat cast. And so, yeah, she and Jan Barry brought us in to discuss doing this show essentially. So that was a really interesting exercise because neither Regina nor I like really expected that particular opportunity, but there it was. So that's how that came to be.
That's so cool. And you're in Atlanta, and Atlanta Southern hip hop. I feel like means a lot to you, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think is the biggest misconception about it?
Uh, I think. Hmm.
And what
I
do you love
think
about it? Sorry.
no. I mean, I think one of those misconceptions came up during the Manny Fresh Scott Storch beat battle, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I didn't watch this particular beat battle because I haven't been watching any of the beat battles. Like, I even tuned into the Lil Jon and T-Pain one, and I just realized that, like, I was literally hearing music through someone's phone, and I just got angry. And I don't know, like, I'm probably the only person that feels that way, but I was just like, I'd rather just, like, play the records here. But, the debate over who won between Scott Storch and Manny Fresh was particularly interesting. And I think it came down to what these judges thought to be quote unquote like universal or more accessible or like quote unquote more um, accessible. And I mean, if you were to ask me, like, who has had the most reach and the most lasting influence, and how that was demonstrated through the music, like, I would say Manny, like, 10 million percent. It's just that I think we take that influence for granted now.
Hmm.
Um, so I would say that there's still this weird feeling of Southern hip hop being considered too quote unquote regional, or it's um, like limited in scope. But I just don't think that's true, and that's really weird to say when K-pop stars are emulating like a 21 Savage or like a
Mm-hmm.
Migos or whatever. We're still doing the Migos flow in the year 2020, but I feel like so often that's like still the case, and that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, that's really true. And what is like your favorite thing about Southern hip hop?
I mean, oh, that's asking a lot. That's asking a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, to be fair,
Mm-hmm.
like I do listen to a lot of hip hop from like across the country or whatever. Like I love what LA has going on. I think when
Mm-hmm.
boom bap's done right, I think it's amazing, things like that. But I think what I love about Southern hip hop the most is just like the spirit and like almost like the buoyancy, whether that is through like the percussion and the bass, or just like the sheer just I don't know. There's just like a lot of good anthems that have come out of the South. Well, like really unfuckwittable anthems, and like um yeah, even if you think of like a DG Yola, like Ingo and Letta, like nobody will look at that song and be like, oh, that was like such like an undeniable resounding success. But like with the way the song hits, like it's amazing how this genre that was once cast as like the stuff of like one hit wonders, or cast as like something of like a passing fad, how that has continued to be timeless in its own way. I think Crime Mob is like a really great example of that. Like this kiddie group that was once kind of cast off as like Lil Jon signees, the last gasp of this like crunk fad or whatever, how their music has continued to resonate. I think that's another great example where like I don't think people really foresaw the fact that we were going to still be championing Nuckabee Buck as like the national anthem.
Yeah, I did not see that coming
Mm-hmm.
at all. I remember just like listening to that in like middle school or
Mm-hmm.
maybe earlier. And yeah,
Yeah.
just yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure,
Mm,
for sure.
that's
So like, okay, so if I
mm,
was to pin any one aspect that I really really love about Southern hip hop, it is
mm,
the fact it is how crunk, or like this feeling of being crunk, has continued to evolve and manifest like over the years, like dating back to like 3 6 Mafia, where like I joke that like all my favorite songs are 3 6 Mafia songs, but I mean that in the sense that like even if it's not like by 3 6 Mafia, it's like a remake, or we're still like championing that particular sound and like that particular aesthetic, because I feel like a lot of Southern hip hop is indebted to 3 6 Mafia. But yeah, from the way the
mm,
crunk has evolved from like 3 6 Mafia to obviously like Lil Jon to like Crime Mob to I mean Waka Flocka Flame. Like when
mm-hmm.
Waka Flocka Flame wrote off Flockavelli and said like, "Oh, that music wasn't that good," like that shit really broke my heart, because even though it might not have been um what like Wu Tang Clan like expects or anything like that, there was still like so much feeling and heart in that music that felt so crucial to me at that particular time, and even still to this day. And it saddened me that Waka didn't really see, or doesn't really seem to understand how the influences continue to like play out. Like I even see some of that spirit in like some of the SoundCloud rap that emerged like in the very beginning. I feel like yeah, I feel like he even underestimates himself, honestly.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot. Even with me, like I grew up in South Florida, and
Mm-hmm.
there are like so many subgenres of hip hop there. Like I never, um, I guess appreciated juke music for what it was
Mm.
until DJ Khaled put out that song. I think a year or two ago. I think it was 2 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And I was just like, oh yeah, this was like a whole sound. Like it was like
Yeah.
very regional.
Yeah.
I just like it was just like music that I grew up with.
Yeah. And that's the
Yeah.
other thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking about Southern hip hop, I don't think people really understand how vast the genre is. Like, when
Mm-hmm.
typically where we're talking about East Coast and West Coast, we're usually pinning it to New
New
York
York
or
and
Los
Cali.
Angeles, like very,
Oh
very
right.
specific states.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, we're not talking about the South in the same way. Like, I feel like maybe this conversation would be a lot different if we reckoned with South Florida rap as South Florida rap, as opposed to being under this umbrella of like Southern hip hop. But because we're using this umbrella term, it's like I think we're constantly like arguing and going back and forth as to like what it actually is,
Mm-hmm.
slash like we have these very cursory thoughts as to what that canon should sound like. But I mean, that's the reality, right? Is that like the South is so vast that you have to talk about South Florida, and you have to talk about Memphis, and you have to talk
Mm-hmm.
about Houston, and you have to talk about Atlanta. I mean, that's definitely the struggle with bottom of the map in particular, is that like whenever we sit down to do like a particular episode, we're like, okay, it's almost like we're rolling out the map and like, okay, have we hit every every
Yeah.
state that we possibly can? Because otherwise, folks are going to be coming for us. It's a fun challenge, but it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's very vast and like sounds vary, and then you have like 40, 30 years of history to cover.
Right, right, exactly. And then the other part of it too is that like I felt when you look back at that particular time as like Southern hip hop is sort of like coming into like fruition, it's like you're learn I don't know, like trying to wrap your mind around that history is like it's definitely like intimidating task. Like I don't know if you're familiar with the book Third Coast. It's by a writer who was based in here in Atlanta called Ronnie Sarek, and he was writing for the Alt Weekly in Atlanta called Creative Loafing. But like his book is one that I reference all the time. It covers as much of the South as he could have in that particular moment, and it's still like a 400-page book. And I'm like, that book has,
Oh, wow.
you know what I mean? It cuts off like in the early 2000s. It's like if we were to try to do this again with all that we know about Southern hip hop, like that is a trying task. It would be a
Yeah,
very trying task.
a lot has happened since the early 2000s.
So much,
So
so
much.
much.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, because, I mean, if it ends before even Outkast gets their Grammy, that's like already.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if it's immediately after the Grammy, like
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
There's still so much ground to cover.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
20. That's 20 years. It's 20
Right.
years.
Yeah. There's so many artists, and yeah, that is a lot. Who are your top five?
How dare you?
I know. I was like, should I tell her this beforehand so she can think about this some more?
Cause like,
Yeah,
uh,
it's tough.
well, I think artist lists are stupid. Like, I genuinely
uh,
do. Cause like,
yeah.
I think, well, the art of list making, as far as like hip hop goes, is a really fascinating thing, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I think, there's like the acknowledged, like these are the ones that are absolutely required to be on that list, but like, I feel like I don't know. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
lists are tricky because a lot of people feel pressured. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, there's some peer pressure there to include like certain artists and things like that. And
Right.
then there's like when you're talking about like a top 5, you know what I mean? Are you talking about it as far as like sheer hit singles? Are you talking about it as far as like consistency, like with albums and things like that? Like there's all this criteria, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously when you're talking about an artist and longevity, they've gone through all these different stages. You might not like every single stage, and I don't know. I feel
Yeah.
like it's so subjective. It is interesting. It is interesting, but like okay,
I mean, just like your personal top five,
like
like
artists, songs,
rappers.
albums, what rappers?
Yeah.
Okay, how dare you? Let's see here.
Or you can choose if you want. You know,
What's
you can
that?
choose. You can choose albums or rappers, or I don't know what would be a third option. Yeah, albums or rappers. If
Okay.
whichever ones.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, if we're gonna think about, okay, so I would say that one of my favorite artists that I do find myself returning to all the time is Future.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Future's definitely up there. And then if I had to pick a favorite project of his, I mean that's really really tricky. Like I re-listened to 56 Nights recently because of it just became available on streaming services, and I forgot just like how visceral that was,
Mm-hmm.
like so incredible. So Future's up there. I think Migos is on my personal list, but um if you're talking like, and I think I'd have to submit Migos specifically because of Culture, because Culture was such like a titanic achievement. And it's an album that I continue to like return to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you didn't ask Southern rap, right? It was just like
No,
rappers in
just
general.
rappers
Okay,
in general. No,
okay,
I
got it,
wouldn't do that to you.
got it, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned Waka earlier. Like, it's interesting. Like, I would never consider Waka Flocka to be like a top five MC or anything like that. But like Flockavelli, like
Mm-hmm.
really, 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 really hit home for me. Same for like Run the Jewels too. Like, I don't think all their albums are my favorite, but two hit at a very particular moment. Um, I really like Open My Eagle over in LA. Uh, Megan Thee Stallion, Fever,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then like Outcast. I mean,
Right.
obviously, I feel like you have to bow down to Outcast in that sense, and they are a unit. I would never separate them, never
Mm-hmm.
ever. Oh my God, this is so hard. This is so hard. Was that five?
Yeah, I think that was five.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
Missy Elliott was obviously like a really formative artist for me growing up.
Right.
I think I don't think she gets acknowledged enough, which I
She
think is crazy.
not at
Um,
all.
and
She
I
does not.
No, she doesn't, because
Mm-hmm.
we're still struggling to like spell her last name. It's like I should not be seeing this in the year 2020. It is two T's. It is two
Yes.
T's.
Every time I spell, I'm like two L's, two T's.
It's simple. Just like
Yeah.
how you remember to spell Mississippi correctly. Just
Right.
exactly as you said, two L's, two T's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that's crucial.
Ah, God.
Yeah. I
The
don't
fact
know.
that people get that wrong, like, it makes my blood boil.
Yeah. Yeah. Little things. It's really, really, really annoying.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of artists don't get their due in general, but Missy Elliott's definitely up there.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. She's just hit after hit. But her recent album was really good, and I really like her song with Lizzo.
Oh my God.
Mhm.
Right. Like,
Mhm.
she's still consistent when she is putting out stuff. Like,
Mhm.
she's still, like, remarkably consistent.
Yeah. Who would you say? This might be another bad question, but
Uh huh.
who's your dream person to interview?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Um, I think for a second it was Andre 3000, just because of how inaccessible he seemed. It's weird. It's like
Mhm.
you always want the thing that you can't have, right?
Right.
And one thing about Atlanta, for at least the years that I've been here, I moved here in 2010, was that for a long time everybody had an Andre 3000 story,
Hmm.
in that they would run into him at the Target. My friend's boyfriend, who was a DJ, had Andre asking him what he was playing, which is a DJ's like faux pas. Like, you don't ask a DJ about his shit like while he's getting his
Mhm.
set down. And it was only after the fact that he learned that that guy was Andre 3000. I
Oh
felt
wow.
like everybody had a story where they ran into him or something interesting or whatever, and like I didn't have that story, and
Mhm.
I was so offended. I was like, I've been here for so long. How has
How
this not
dare you?
happened to
Right.
me
Yeah.
yet? How has this not happened to
Oh my
me?
god. Yeah. So it still hasn't happened.
No. And then of course,
Mhm.
like, he's doing his around the world in 40 days thing,
Mhm.
with this whatever instrument he's playing right now, which
Is it
I
a
respect
flute?
it,
Yeah.
you know, but
Mhm.
I don't think, no, it still has not happened.
Yeah. It'll happen.
Thank
I
you.
feel like yeah. You're welcome. Yeah, that makes sense. And then since you watched Sailor Moon recently, do you have any episodes that stood out to you?
Oh my God.
Mm.
Hmm. Uh, I think actually in the big, like toward the beginning of the series, it was really interesting how I guess the quote unquote monsters kept popping up through like retail scenarios, right? I thought that was
Mhm.
really interesting, because I think like for example, like I still remember the episode where they set up like makeup counters, you know?
Oh yeah.
Right? And I think like the first, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like the first couple seasons kind of, they seem to be meta commentary on how to like, they were always like scheming on how to prey after these young women and
Mm-hmm.
like sort of like prey on their insecurities in a weird way. It's like you need this makeup in order for, you know, whoever to think that you're beautiful.
Yeah.
And of course, like then Sailor Moon would then be tasked to destroy those evil forces. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was interesting. The Dark Lady stuff, like it messed me up just because I was like, I want that fit like real bad. I'm supposed to be rooting against you,
Right.
but she's so beautiful.
She
It's
is.
it's just not fair. It's just not fair.
Yeah. I really want to cosplay as her one day.
I think you could do it.
Thank you. I think you could do it too.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I never thought of that though. It's a good point you bring up because those first few episodes are like, you need this jewelry, you need to lose weight. Here's like this love letter I'll read you to like make you feel a certain way. And it was
Yeah,
like
right?
kind of like preying on those things that a lot of people and women in general like feel insecure about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like Sailor Moon was like dismantling it.
Exactly. That's
Right.
really what had me hooked in the very beginning. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is interesting."
Mm-hmm.
And like I feel like first wave feminism or whatever wave, you know, was earlier on,
Mm-hmm.
like first wave feminism, I would say, like would have argued that you didn't need the makeup. Like would have been like the answer would have been like burn the makeup, right? Or like, you know, tear the
Right.
shit down, like you don't need this fanciful stuff. What was interesting about Sailor Moon to me was that like the answer wasn't necessarily to ditch all the pretty stuff. Like she still had her compact, she still had the nails or whatever. It was still like
Mm-hmm.
good to be cute, but it was part of this larger transformation to become the hero that she needed to be. And I thought that was really teachable too, because
Mm-hmm.
like, um, I don't, it doesn't have to be like one way or the other. It's all about intention, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest draws for me to just like there's like this duality you can have. Like you can like Sailor Jupiter you mentioned before, like she's a tomboy, but she's also like a little boy crazy and also like can cook really well and also can fight really well and it's like
Mm-hmm.
you can be all of these things and be pretty and be nice and you know whatever you want to be at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. That I mean, that shit had me so mad that about the Color Pop collaboration. I don't know if you
mhm.
saw that.
I did.
Oh my god.
Mhm.
I mean that it got me in my feelings. It got me
Mhm.
in my feelings. But number one, that shit sold out like so quickly, and then I was like, two, like, do I really need pastel shadows right now? Do I really need this as
Yeah.
like a adult human being? But it still tugged at my heartstrings.
Yeah, yeah. I was luckily able to grab the palette, but I didn't get the blush. But it was very much like
How's the palette?
it's really nice. It's applies really nicely. And yeah, I like it.
A
I do
dream.
like it. Yeah. I'm sure I'm hoping they do another restock at some point.
I swear.
Yeah. Yeah, and Kith Women just did a thing too. I don't know if you saw that. They like released a bunch of shirts and like
Oh
yeah,
god.
that was
Okay.
yesterday and it's sold out.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Hmm. But there'll be more. It seems like there's a lot of stuff popping up this year, and there's like a movie coming out later this year, so
Wow.
there'll be more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for anyone who wants to get into journalism or podcasting?
Ooh.
Yeah, loaded questions.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say that finding okay, so
Mm-hmm.
conventional wisdom would have you say that it's important to like find a quote unquote beat.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's necessarily important right now, but I do think that you have to be in it beyond reasons like I just want to meet famous people.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's really critical. searching to figure out like where can I get in, where I can fit in, like what is it that I have to contribute that the rest of the world doesn't have to contribute. And that does involve, just taking in this culture, being a voracious reader, being a voracious like podcast listener, like really kind of taking in the landscape to figure that out. I think that's important, at least to figure out like what will set you apart from everything else. I know with podcasting in particular, I know it's a very trendy industry. Yeah, that's safe to say. Like, I think it's a very trendy industry in the moment, and people are really excited, and that speaks to the possibility with podcasts, right? The fact that anybody could just really, get started. But I do think that in order for this hard work to be worth it, and it is really, really hard work, you have to land on like what will set you apart. And I think that that has to continue to be like a driving force. It's something that's gonna, I don't know, it's tricky. It like whatever it is, whether it's like writing or with podcasting, it's more than just like talking or like liking the sound of yourself talking. It's about figuring out like what is it that you have to contribute.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to bring it back a little bit. Have you thought of a rapper or subgenre that Sailor Venus would like?
Okay. All right. So it's interesting because she is really big on, she was a pop singer, right? In a past life. So I feel like she would be all up on the trends, obviously.
Oh, fair.
I see her as being like pretty savvy. I don't know, I'm trying to think. I first thought of the baby for some reason, but like I don't think that's right. Somehow that doesn't feel like a right answer, but like I could see it. I think I could see it.
Maybe she's a Missy fan.
A Missy fan, I think like with her like
dancing.
She's probably just like paying attention to all the things. Like she sees Post Malone and acknowledges him, but maybe like, isn't all the way there yet. I don't know. I just see her as being just like a total fan of the culture.
Yeah. I take it. Yeah. And then so in the Toonami / like 90s version, American version of Sailor Moon, they had the Sailor Moon Says PSA at the end of every episode. Where she would just like give a PSA on like why things are wrong. Or like what you should. So if you had a phrase, what would you say? Like Sailor Christina Says.
Top 5 lists are stupid.
That's fair. That's completely fair.
Of any genre. Any genre.
They are really hard and they're really unfair and they are a little stupid. Yeah, totally. I get it.
It's okay. It's a fun exercise for people, and I get it. People love to argue. People love to fight.
Yeah, I think like it tells you like a little bit about a person sometimes. And just like, who do you love? Who do I have to listen to get to know you a little bit better?
But I think if people treated top 5 lists more so as that, as opposed to,
like who are the best,
or like, or coming to like some weird consensus, I think it'd be way more interesting.
Okay,
I think it'd be way more interesting. Like, here's the thing, like when people put Biggie and Tupac both on their list, it's like I don't trust this person because you are either a Biggie person or you are a Tupac person. You can appreciate both, but the thing is, these two artists are like completely different. And so if you were being honest and truthful for yourself, you are only picking one.
Right.
I will fight, like that is like I will fight about that. Till the very last days. But
that makes all the sense. Yeah. Well, mines are more like, what do I have to listen to like know you? But yeah, I get what you're saying for sure. Yeah. but thanks for coming on the show. If people want to know about why top 5 lifts are bad, where can they find you?
You can hit me on Twitter at Mina Ann Lee, and then the podcasts again are Something to Say. That is SUM apostrophe N to say, and Bottom of the Map, like the Jeezy song. Oh my God, see, Jeezy should have been on that list too, and now I feel like I fucked up the entire list.
Well, it's still there. People will know.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm Victoria L. Johnson, aka Miss Old School that's Old School with a K on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find the Sailor Moon Fan Club podcast at Moonies Club on Twitter and Moonies_club on Instagram. And thanks for listening. Thanks for being on the show, Christina.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.